Thank you for joining me today. We're going to have a short introduction to jobs in Vinea Nova. We're going to start by looking at an overview of the components of a job. We see on the screen in front of us that a job is really the culmination of three things: a location where the work was done, an activity that is being done, and resources, namely the people that do the work. We're going to go through each of those things one by one, and we're going to look at details of those components. Going to start with the vineyard. Now, the slide that you see in front of you presents a brief summary of the information that we hold about vineyards. The first screen at the top, you see the overview where you can see the area of the vineyard, the planted area, where it's located, an address, a phone number if we have it. And we see there's a number of tabs sitting along the top. The blocks, the map, and we're looking at the map tab now, notes and documents, more, assets and jobs. If we look down, we can see the first tab is highlighted here, which is the blocks tab. That lists every block in this vineyard. And below this, at the bottom, we see a picture which has got the rows in this block and a picture of the vineyard itself. And down here, a profile of the vineyard. We can also see that we can see key relationships here with the vineyard, who the grower is, who the first point of contact is, and we can store other information about the vineyard. Now, what we're going to do now is to look in more detail in the application Vinea itself, and we can see a bit more about how that actually looks. We're going to start by finding a vineyard. To do this, we click on the Sites menu option, and we can see a list of all the vineyards that are in our chosen business unit, which in this case is New Zealand South. If I click on the vineyard, I can select that vineyard. This will open up the vineyard screen, and I'll see a list of all the blocks in this vineyard. We can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks. If I click on one of these blocks, I can see some overview information about the block, the name of the block, its status, whether it's producing, in contract, out of contract, in development. I can see its variety, the clone, the rootstock, the spacing of the vines, the planted area, and how many vines in the vineyard block. I'm now going to go back to the block list, and I can select one of these blocks and look at the individual rows in here. And here I can see all the rows in the block. Returning back to the block, I can see back to the main vineyard screen. I can click on the map, and when I do this, I can see the blocks all highlighted on the map. We have notes and documents available, and if I click on one of these documents, I can open this, and then I can see a picture of the photo of the vineyard. I can also see here that we've got a note called Vineyard Access Point. And this is where we enter the vineyard. This is really the key information about the vineyard that we work on. Clicking on more, we can see I've also got some information like such as a hyperlink to a map. I've got details of who owns the vineyard and who is the first point of contact. I can click on this link for the first point of contact to see this details of this person in Vinea. And this person may very well have other documents associated with them. I can see details if they are an employee of their pay scales, their contact details. Returning back to the vineyard, again in the vineyard, I can see that the parent grower is a company called Vinea Limited. If I click on them, I will go to this grower and I can see that this grower owns 2 vineyards and I can see all their contact details. Moving on from the vineyard, we're now going to briefly look at resources. The resources are the people or things we use to undertake the work in the vineyard. We're starting off with people, workers, as the key resource. When we look at a worker, we can see that we have a picture of the worker, we have key information about the worker, about their categorization, pay scales, their visas, their payrolls. We have details of their attendance or of their absences from work. Got contact information, we've got notes and documents, and we actually also know where they are staying, if they're staying in an accommodation which is organised by the user of this software. To get to the worker details, we're going to click on the side menu and select workers, and then we can search down and see a list of all our workers, contact details, which business unit they're in. We're going to select a worker called Ruby Chen, and when we look at this worker, we see we have a picture of Ruby. We can see she has a role of worker and is located in the New Zealand South Business Unit. We have her nationality, her languages, her contact details displayed on the screen in front of us. We can also see that we have a history of payroll information for her. And if we select the current pay period, which is not processed, I can click on that and I can see all the work she has done since her last pay was produced. I can also see that Ruby is classified as an RSE pay scale, that she's an employee, that she's got a particular pay scale, that we have her visa details, driver's license, and payroll number. If I go into notes and documents, I can see that there are 3 documents here. One is a photo of Ruby, the other is a passport photo, and the other is an employment agreement. We're going to look at the employment agreement here. To do that, we click on this, and we click on the little viewer in here. And I can see here's an employment agreement for Ruby. I can just close out of this by clicking anywhere else and go back to Ruby's key details. I can also click on the attendance tab, and this is where we see any events where Ruby has not turned up at work. We can click on one of these records here and we can see there's details of that. It's related to the 7th of April. It says she was on a particular job. She reported as being sick or unwell. She called to advise that, and she has had a day off. She was reviewed by the pastoral carer on the same day, who confirmed that she was sick and that she also had no leave allocation. Didn't need a medical certificate, and there was no charge to the client. Click on the More tab, we can see that we have their contact details. We also have information about exactly where they're staying. Right now we're going to click on this accommodation unit, and we can see here that Ruby is located in a place called Maryvale Lodge. The head of that accommodation is Tracy Atkins, and there is another person also in that place. Ruby is in bed number 1 in Unit 1, and Malia Fetu is in bed number 2, also in Unit 1. So back to our concept of a job, and we see that a job is the intersection of a location, some resources, and an activity undertaken. Now we'll focus on the activity. We're looking here at a particular activity called bud rubbing. We see an overview of bud rubbing, exactly what it is, at the top of the screen. And we can see that we've got details, some documents about bud rubbing recorded here. We've also got some rate information and velocity information. What we're likely to charge for this activity, what we're likely to pay the worker, and how fast we expect this activity to be undertaken. We also see some documentation at the bottom and details of the codes used for the finance system and the payroll system. Zooming, we're now going to look at this activity in more detail. To do this, we scroll down here to the submenu called Activities, and we see all our activities in here. We can just type bud rub or bud into the search screen, and that's bed. We can type bud into the search screen, and we can see this particular code. We look here that we can see that this is part of the bud rubbing activity. It's plannable. The resources is worker. It's a labor resource, and the work unit is vines, and the cost unit is cents. And what this means is that workers are paid in cents per vine. The duration unit is hour, and that's used for the velocity, which is based on vines per hour. We're going to look at the notes and documents here, and there's a number of interesting ones here. So firstly, we're going to look at the standard operating procedure for bud rubbing. The latest version was version 1.2. We open that, we see it's active, and so I'm going to click on the little icon here to look at that SOP, and we can see here we have a documentation on how bud rubbing is actually undertaken, and in fact a picture. We go back to the notes and we can see there is a photo of bud rubbing, and again, once again we can click on here and we can see there is a link to a video that's been saved, which is a video of the process for bud rubbing. Finally, we have two references to find here, and they represent the payroll code and the account code. These are used in transferring transactional data between Vinea and the payroll system and the finance system. The last piece of the puzzle is the job itself. Thinking about a job, there's some basic information about the job, which includes where it's being done, which site, what the blocks are, where the work is being done, and in the case of piecework, how many vines are being worked on in each block. There's also some extra information that we can present, such as maps and progress for the job. It's also important that we have details on the rates that are being charged for the work, the payroll and charge out rates. We know that the activities already have standard operating procedures, and these can be attached as well. Vinea has the ability to incorporate quality assessments through mobile forms on our Vinea mobile app. All the transactions that get recorded against the job, the piecework and the attendance, are also available. Another feature of the job is that it's assigned to a team or a supervisor. To get to our job in Vinea, there are two ways. Firstly, we can go into the job area, click on jobs, and we can search for a job by typing in the name. Or if it's a job that we've dealt with recently, we can click on the icon at the top of the screen called History, and we can see the list of those. We can pin a favorite job, and then we can select that. This opens the details of the job itself. Looking at this job itself, we can see some overview information, a picture of the relating to the job. We can see that the job is based at a vineyard. It is vine level work done by Rowe, and we can see that it's going to be billed to someone, Vino NZ, and we have an expected start date and end date. Here we have activities, and this tells us that we're going to be undertaking an activity called wire lifting. We're paying the workers 3.8 cents per vine, and we're charging out at 7.6 cents a vine, and this is what's called a default activity. We can see that this has been assigned to a supervisor, and we can see that there's 7 blocks in the vineyard, and in fact that some of them have already got completed work on it. There are 7,676 vines completed, compared to 7,000 out of a total of 7,676. The bottom block, we see there's nothing completed. If we click on the map, we can actually look at the map, and in color terms, we can see which blocks have been completed, and for those blocks that have not been completed, how far they are through. If we click on more, we can see that this job is supervised by me. Now, I could have allocated this job to an individual supervisor, or I could have allocated it to a team. We can also see the job is tagged for quality assessment using our QA in the field tools. And if we'd had documents, we could have attached those as well. Returning back to the overview, we can see that the next tab is the work record. If I click on the work record tab, I'm going to see details of all the transactions that have been recorded against this, whether they're attendance, that's the worker starting work and finishing work, or whether they are piecework transactions. So if I open one of the piecework transactions, we can see that this records the fact that Ruby worked on, in one particular day, she was involved in carrying out the wire lift activity for 5,893 vines. We've looked at the location of work, the vineyard, the people that do work, the resources, the activity undertaken, and how this looks like in Vinea when you look at the job and the transactions arising from the job. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video and going through each of these things in more detail.